Everyone, welcome to this explainer. We all absolutely love going out to eat, right? But have you ever stopped to think about the sheer amount of energy it takes to keep the restaurant industry running? Today, we're taking a fascinating look behind the scenes to break down exactly how sustainability accountants measure the massive, nonstop power appetite that keeps the world's commercial kitchens firing on all cylinders. Think about your absolute favorite restaurant for a second. What does it actually take to power that experience? When you sit down for a meal, you're enjoying the results of some seriously intense energy demands. We're talking about roaring commercial-grade stoves, massive walk-in freezers running 24/7, and, of course, perfectly temperature-controlled dining rooms. It's like a giant puzzle of power. The energy intensity of food service is just incredibly high compared to almost any other type of commercial building. All right, let's just dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the restaurant energy appetite, how we measure total energy consumed, calculating grid reliance, the big shift to renewables, and finally, why these metrics actually matter in the real world. So kicking things off with Section 1, the restaurant energy appetite and the high energy intensity of commercial food service. Basically, making sure customers are comfortable and the food is cooked to perfection takes a massive amount of power. And since so much of that energy is still fossil fuel-based, it carries some major environmental impacts, like greenhouse gas emissions. Plus, from a purely business perspective, those immense power demands directly drive up operational costs. To really understand how this is tracked, we have to look at the actual accounting rules, specifically from the SASB standards, which are now part of the IFRS Foundation for the restaurant sector. Under their energy management section, there is a very specific metric that establishes 3 absolute must-report numbers for a restaurant: their total energy consumed, the percentage of that energy coming from the grid, and the percentage coming from renewable sources. Which brings us to Section 2, measuring total energy consumed and bringing everything back to a single metric. Now, this presents a real accounting challenge. A restaurant might use direct natural gas for the fryers and purchase electricity for the air conditioning. They might even use purchased heating or steam. So how in the world do you capture all of those vastly different power sources in one aggregate number? Well, the answer lies in strict standardization. To make sense of it all, accountants have to translate every single power source into one uniform metric, the gigajoule. It honestly doesn't matter if the energy is purchased from the city or generated by solar panels on the roof. It all gets converted into an aggregate figure in gigajoules. This is completely crucial because it levels the playing field, letting investors compare apples to apples. Okay, but how do they actually get to that number? There are strict rules here. Step 1. When calculating energy from fuels, they have to apply higher heating values, also known as gross calorific values. These are either measured directly or pulled straight from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Step 2. Any purchased electricity, those kilowatt hours you see on a normal power bill, must be meticulously converted into gigajoules. No shortcuts allowed. These factors have to be applied consistently. All right, moving right along to Section 3, calculating grid electricity reliance and defining the restaurant's dependence on the grid. Once a business knows its total energy footprint, it has to isolate exactly how much it relies on the conventional power grid. Why? Because the conventional grid is often heavily reliant on fossil fuels, leaving the company totally exposed to fluctuating energy prices and future climate regulations. The math here is actually pretty simple, but it tells a big story. To find the grid percentage, a restaurant simply takes its purchased grid electricity and divides it by its total energy consumption. This straightforward division formula brilliantly reveals the exact fraction of the restaurant's energy that is supplied directly by standard, purchased power. It gives everyone a very clear view of their conventional energy footprint. Next up is Section 4, the shift to renewables, and what actually counts as green energy. This tackles the third part of the SSB metric, and honestly, it's where things get the most complex. Companies are super eager to show that they are using green energy, but the accounting rules for what legally qualifies as renewable under these standards are incredibly strict. Think of a restaurant's total energy as a giant pie made of gigajoules. It essentially gets sliced into 3 main pieces: grid electricity, validated renewable energy, and other direct energy like natural gas piped right into the kitchen. And if a company wants to brag about a big renewable slice, the energy they use has to meet some very tough criteria. The standard dictates that renewables must replenish at the same rate or faster than they deplete. We're talking geothermal, wind, solar, and hydropower. But catch that last bullet point: biomass. Biomass is heavily constrained. You can't just burn anything and call it green. It literally requires strict third-party certification from groups like the Forest Stewardship Council or specific Greenie regional standards. Now, here's a super fascinating accounting quirk. Let's say a restaurant puts solar panels on its roof or signs a green power purchase agreement. They can't just automatically claim that clean energy. To officially count it as renewable, the restaurant must explicitly retain and retire what are called renewable energy certificates, or RECs, or guarantees of origin. If they sell those certificates to someone else to make a quick buck, boom, they completely lose the right to claim that green energy for themselves. And get this, another surprising fact straight from the rules. Restaurants absolutely cannot take credit for the ambient renewable energy already floating around in their city's standard power grid. If your local utility decides to add a bunch of wind power to the general mix, the restaurant gets zero credit for that. It is completely excluded because it's outside their direct control. You only get credit for what you explicitly procure yourself. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Why Energy Metrics Matter, and the business case for measuring gigajoules. We've talked a lot about RECs and conversion math and strict definitions, but why? Why does a massive restaurant chain, or its investors, actually care about doing all this complex accounting? What is the real-world business case here? Well, it's definitely not just an exercise in paperwork. Tracking these metrics is a vital business tool. By keeping a close eye on those gigajoules, companies can pinpoint exact ways to decrease operational costs through efficiency upgrades. Plus, by boosting their validated renewable energy percentage, they actively protect themselves. They limit their exposure to tightening greenhouse gas regulations and totally mitigate the risks of wild price swings in conventional fossil fuels. So, putting it all together, as energy costs inevitably fluctuate and global climate regulations continue to ramp up, the way a restaurant manages its energy appetite becomes a massive indicator of its long-term financial health. So the next time you're sitting in a perfectly air-conditioned dining room enjoying a great meal, ask yourself, is your favorite restaurant's power diet actually sustainable for the future? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep asking the right questions.